Welcome back, everybody, to another Sunday night live stream here on Path Less Pedaled. And today's topic is going to be bikes and art. There just seems to be something about bicycling that inspires a lot of artistic creativity. And today I'm going to chat with two artists that I follow on Instagram. One of them I've got to hang out with last winter, and they are Rusty Pedal. Let me bring up their grams here so you can see for yourself. One is our friend Colin Holmes, who goes by Rusty Pedal. He's based in Tucson, Arizona, and he's a sculptor. This is actually a big trout that he made for Laura and I. And the other is Christina Waite, hoping I pronounced that correctly, but she is an illustrator focusing specifically on mountain bike art. So both super talented, and I think we're gonna have a fun conversation about how they got into making art and how bikes fit in. But before we do, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters who keep lights on, especially the fancy purple one in the background. You guys make this content possible, and if you guys enjoy the channel, consider joining us on Patreon or buying a sticker and all that good stuff. All that aside, let's meet our guests. Welcome to the channel, Colin and Christina. Yay!
Hello!
So I wanted to start out with you guys because you're both very talented artists, but completely different mediums. And I want to see like what we all three can nerd out with in terms of art. But let's jump into it. Just quickly describe like the art that you do. Let's start with Colin.
I do mainly kind of sculptural art made out of bicycle parts and other kind of scrap metal. I think I focus mostly on desert scenes and desert animals, although I do some other creatures and stuff like that.
Cool. How about you, Christina?
I specialize in mostly mountain bike art. I do some other bikes, but mostly cycling related. And I mostly work in pen and brush pen, and I focus really on capturing the like excitement and energy of mountain biking, like wheel spinning, like dirt being up, and just the awesome experience of the ride. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, that is one thing that drew me to your illustrations. There's lots of like kind of kinetic energy that you managed to capture with just a 2D medium. So let's see, we got people trickling into the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, and if you guys have any questions for Colin and Christina as we go, definitely leave those in the comments. Let's talk about origins. How did you guys get started making the art that you make now? Let's start with you, Christina.
So it's kind of a long story, but let's just do the short version.
It's short version.
I moved to Seattle, and I'm a really big mountain biker. It's a big reason why I moved up here. And there's this one time where my twin sister came and visited me, and she was riding these mountain bike trails, and she just shred. I never drew a mountain bike before. I was so I had to like put it on paper. I have a journal. And then that was the first sketch that I did that I was like, like this was easy. It was fun. I think artists always ask about like, how do they find their style? And that was the moment I said, this is my style. I love mountain biking, and it just felt effortless. And then from there on, I was just drawing mountain bikes every day, like different positions, different types of trails and features. And then it just kind of grew as more people noticed and started asking me to design for them, and went from just a little hobby to a business. So that was pretty exciting.
Cool. How about you, Colin? How does one get started in sculpture?
The type of sculpture I do kind of came from our local bike co-op called Bicus. When I got back into cycling while I was going to the University of Arizona, I love tinkering and working on things. So I found my way Bicus. And one of Bicus's biggest fundraisers every year is an art auction, and it's generally focused on sculptural stuff made out of welded bike parts. So I kind of started working in that style, hanging out at Bicus a lot, and developed my own voice through that, I think.
Yeah. Did you have someone like show you how to use the torch, or did you watch YouTube tutorials?
I got all of like 1 or 2 minutes instruction on how to use a welder, and then they handed me the welder and the grinders and said, go for it. And I just started goofing around. And yeah, I've, throughout the years, I've watched YouTube videos and I've read books, and mainly I've just learned from experience though.
Yeah, that just seems like a little bit tougher than picking up like a pen and watercolor. There's just like more things and more probability to get tetanus.
Yeah, it's I've definitely gotten hurt a lot more than when I used to draw and paint. So
yeah. So Christina, did you have a fine arts background before?
Yeah, I do. I went to university for animation illustration. I thought that I was going to be a children's book illustrator. I found out that wasn't going to happen. I started working in mobile games at a company down in San Francisco for a while, and then that's after that I moved up here. So I've definitely been technically trained, but yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm learning. I think I've definitely learned more after school than I was in school, but it was a really good foundation. So.
Yeah. So being an artist is kind of a, it's an interesting career path. At what point did you guys feel comfortable, making that leap from, let's say, commercial work to just saying, I'm going to do my art full time? Colin, you want to tee this one off?
I actually just started doing that recently, but I started the transition maybe 5 years ago. I had a couple of pieces in the Bicus art auction, the fundraiser, that went for over $1,000, and I just started to realize, like, wow, people really, kind of value what I'm doing or what I'm making, and maybe I can make something of that. So I started doing it as my third job for about 5 years, which means it didn't get a lot of attention, but I did my best.
Yeah.
And yeah, then recently, I think COVID just kind of brought my values into perspective, and I wanted to pursue this. So that's what I started doing.
Yeah. Cool. How about you, Christina? At what point did this become a side hustle to the full-time gig?
Yeah, it happened mathematically. I gave myself a goal of how much, like, okay, once I make this amount of money off of Sketch Tutorials, I can transition to it full time. I was working as an art assistant at a glass studio at the same time as well. And I realized when I was turning down work for doing bike art, and that is unacceptable. That's when I left the job. It was really fun, but been really fun to focus and forward and see where Sketch Tutorials would take me. So it's been fun.
Right. Wild. So I guess how do people find your art, and who's buying it? I'll let any of you guys jump in.
I can start. So because I have a really specific journey as to how I became successful. I felt like, one, it's hard work, but there's this one YouTube channel, Brian Kennedy does BKXC. Someone who definitely promoted my work, and then he commissioned me to do a drawing for Seth's Bike Hacks, and then I shipped it to Seth's Bike Hacks, and he was like, "Whoa, this is so cool!" He opened up the commission on his live stream, and I was watching, and I was like sweating. I was like, "What if he doesn't like it?" It's so awkward. But he liked it, and then he commissioned me to do the background of his garage door that's in his YouTube videos all the time, and that just exploded my business. It was just so many people were seeing my art at that period of time, and it was just enough visibility to start to get other people to notice, and it's just kind of gone from there. So I feel really fortunate. It's definitely like a people helping others scenario. So
right. So is it individuals that want to get their
right
ride, or is it like companies or brands that want artwork for their bike brand? Or is it a
Yeah,
mix of both?
it's a mix of both. I love doing personal commissions too, or people I'm capturing an amazing journey of theirs. But I also did like one of my bigger jobs. So I did the tuning guide for Shimano. I have another big project with them coming up, which is cool. And then I actually have it here. Okay, I hope you don't mind if I put it's the game.
Wait. Put it back on camera. Oh, dang.
I did
board
that.
game.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. This was really exciting. So
That's sweet.
yeah, there we go. Send it is what it's called. And then I do a lot of work for like bike races or bike shops, trail organizations, and fundraisers. Some other companies. It's really all over the board, which is what is fun. Is I get to work with so many people, and I like talking and meeting new people, so it totally works out.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome that you can have such a very like specific niche, but
Yeah.
still, have it support like an entire business, which is rad.
Yeah.
How about you, Colin? Who's buying your art? Is it just local Tucsonians? How are people finding it? Are you getting commissions from other places?
Yeah, I'm starting to get commissions from kind of all over the country. It started out very much in Tucson, people that would see stuff at the Ficus art auction and not win the item and then ask me to make something. Or a lot of folks liked my creativity and then asked me to design things like gates or fences or stuff like that with some decorative elements. And I kind of built on that word of mouth. But I think a lot of it comes from Facebook and Instagram, mostly Instagram.
Right.
People see my stuff and it's started to go farther than just Tucson, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Cool. I'll bring up actually one of your sculptures here. So this is the one I bought.
Yeah.
And one thing, like you'd done a fish before. I think it was I forget if it was a trout or a salmon, but what made me want to get one of my own was you really nailed the mouth. Like I'm like super into trout fishing, and like the mouth just like kind of is the indicator of the species. It's got to be kind of upturned, like a fat lower jaw, and kind of like that little like puff on the upper lip. And it was such a good, abstracted but still grounded within the actual anatomy of the fish. That I was like, oh, that's super cool. So, I find like your other work too, like with birds, is still like pretty spot on. Where's that one? I think it's the crane here. So when you do something based around an animal, like what's your process to kind of capture the pose of it?
So I think a lot of the time it starts with an actual encounter with the animal, not the fish. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of fishing around here. But with the cranes, I've encountered so many of them on bike tour, on cool rides, to some kind of man-made bodies of water around here. And I've always just been fascinated. And there's this kind of difference between seeing them when you're walking or seeing them in a car versus seeing them on a bike. And I think for me, trying to express that, like using the bike parts, it feels a little bit like that sensation of being on the bicycle and seeing them. So my process, I think, is I print out a bunch of pictures and I kind of like tape them to my welding table. Sometimes I even like draw shapes with marker on my welding table, and then I start, zapping the basic shape together, and then I fill it in with all the little bits.
Yeah. Do you have like you must have like go-to parts that will create certain textures that you want to achieve, right? Because I couldn't imagine just grabbing a bunch of bolts and starting to weld it together.
Yeah, definitely. And, on some level, I try to avoid that. I try to kind of branch out each time. But like lately, I've been really into spoons and knives and stuff to create the feathers on wings. Just like, these Roadrunners, the tail is knives.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, nice.
And then I've been using a lot of front derailleurs for feathers too. You can see on the wing of that Roadrunner.
Okay,
it's front derailleurs. Yeah. And its little
everyone's one
mohawk
by
is
now, anyways.
its little mohawk is fork tines too.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
That's rad. Sweet. Cool. So Christina, when you make an illustration, like what guides the the art? Or do you look at like the overall motion of the body and then try to capture that, or like what's the first thing that you focus on when you're creating an illustration?
Yeah, the first thing I focus on, some of the commissions, like that specific piece, someone's like, all right, this likes technical writing, loves the trail, top of the world Whistler. And then my next is like, okay, how could this compositionally look really cool? I know what the trail looks like, so I also like knew exactly where on the trail. But I focus on the type of writing first, the angle of the writer, and then the composition of the writer versus whatever feature they're doing, and the background. And I definitely feel like moving, like S's are really great to focus on, the overall shape of the movement of the writer. That's one of the first things that I think of too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't draw exactly from photos unless a commission's asking me to replicate. I will kind of hodgepodge things together. Like, oh, I like the writing pose here. It's like I can dramatize it this way, add these trees. Yeah, actually, the one on the left is inspired by Montana.
Oh, nice.
Those are kind of places I made up. I was like, I really, on the one on the right, I was like, I want a cool picture of a guy like surfing down a mountain with a backdrop of PNW trees and the misty mountains. And I just put it together by like what creates a dynamic composition and go from there.
Yeah. So it looks like I noticed a transition in your work this year. You started to incorporate more watercolor. How, like, what brought that on, and like how has that been?
Yeah, my mother does a lot of watercolors, and so when she visits, I did this one visit, and she gave me a tutorial on how to do watercolor, and I really enjoyed it. It's totally different than how I work. I mostly work in black and white, and so it's been like how to try to add more color into my work. Watercolor just fit right in there. Like there, I use like a very fine watercolor brush at the end to still give it some lines, like my brush pen work, but it's been given so much more pop, and it's nice to work and try to get better at something as well. And it's been a while since I've changed up mediums and learned something new, and so watercolor came in at a perfect time.
Yeah. Do you ever do any art completely digitally, or are you do you always still use like a pen and ink?
Yeah,
Both?
I actually do a lot of it mostly digital these days. I would say anything that's commercial is made digitally. So if you scroll up, you passed one. The one of the canyon, the two people going off of the drop, keep scrolling up. It's one of the later ones.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, that one's actually digital too. The patch, the evergreen instructor, that's done digital. And I used to draw everything pen and ink and then scan it and then edit it, but I realized it's a lot slower. And when you decide to take art as a career, speed is everything too. Like how fast can you get through these products? And so quickly I can change color, I can scale, move parts around, work with the client really easily. It's because things are constantly changing, and it's just a more flexible medium. So when you're trying to create design for a client, that digital is just an easier and faster way to go. Yeah. So, and I have a Cintiq, so I'm still drawing. So it's
okay. Yeah. Let's go back here. So let's talk about that a little bit. So Colin, since you've made the leap to full-time artist, how has it changed your relationship to the sculpture? Have you, we were talking about processes earlier. Did you have to make a big change to how you're doing things?
A little bit, yeah. I definitely have had to speed up. I can't just lollygag and play around and experiment. I've also had to kind of like find a way to make more than one of something. So I made 5 or 6 of those Roadrunners so far, and I'm making a couple more soon because people really like those, and like before it used to just be make a sculpture of something and then move on. But now, there's almost a product too. So, I've had to sort of shift my mindset there. And I think there's art in production as well, finding ways to batch out, each sculpture but still have it be unique and still have it be a creative process. But it's definitely a learning process and figuring it out how to do it quickly enough. And I realized I need to charge more too. So
Right.
because I have to pay the bills. So
Yeah. How about
That's
you,
a tough
Christina?
one to balance.
yeah.
How did how did things change when you went full time?
Yeah, also increasing the prices was a really big one for me. I can't believe how cheap I charged in the beginning, honestly. And I think about those people, I was like, got a deal. But a lot of it is how much exposure could you get? And I was still new to drawing bikes too. I was eager to take anything and I was super excited about it. But yeah, upping the price. The print up price was a conversation I had for like 6+ months with people. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. Because I really want to make sure that art is affordable to anybody as well. A big like when I go to shows, I really want to make sure that $5 can get you something and like that anybody can walk away with a print. It's really important to me because I'm that person who's gone to events. I got $20. I want to maximize what I can get and I want it to be affordable. So it was kind of tough for me to raise my prices a bit, but I still kept them. I still have a range of what you can get. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've done something similar with my watercolors. I'll sell those definitely for a lot more, but then people can also buy, postcards or larger prints. So depending on the price point, someone can, like you said, someone can have a piece of art. It's not like just totally exclusive. And it also allows, like Colin, you're saying, doing things in batches. Like if I do one watercolor, that's cool. But it's cooler is like being able to produce like a stack of prints and sell those and have that as income coming in. So it's not just like these one-off pieces, but it's all a balance. Yeah. Let's see. So you guys in the YouTube comment, if you have any questions for Colin or Christina, let me know and I will pass that along. So what are some of the challenges that you guys run into, doing this full time now?
I think there's a term for it. I can't think of it. It's sometimes you get a ton of work and sometimes you don't get any work. So, it's unfortunate that it happens in waves where sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing? And then other times I'm thinking that I have too much and I'm stressing out and I want to take all the work because you never know when it's,
Feast or famine.
So that is the term. So that's difficult. So you always have to, so like when you price things out, you have to factor in also the times where you're not going to get work. So like that's when that's how I price my freelancing. That's how another freelancer told me how to price for freelancing because that's just part of it. So, and staying confident through it is definitely what's tough. I'm sure anyone has watched that. Every time I get kind of down, honestly, something amazing happens. I'm like, what was I thinking? So I've been really fortunate, I think, to have some really awesome opportunities fall in my lap. So
yeah,
I've been
grateful.
I've been struggling with the creative ebb and flow too. I'll have these like explosions of creative energy and create all these cool things, and then it's like, I'm exhausted and I don't know how to produce something beautiful for a little bit, and I think that's really hard for me. Trying to find a way to consistently hold that energy.
I've discovered for myself, like I love bikes, I love making videos, I love watercolor, I've been getting into woodworking and all this other stuff. I find like when I'm at a creative drought in one medium, I'll go heavy into another. And in that process, it's like it'll reawaken something, but how about you, Christina? How do you ever deal with artistic blocks and how do you get through it?
Yeah, I totally do. Which is tough because I feel like some days I sit down and like I whip out a bike. I was like, that's awesome. Other days I'm like, I have the classic imposter syndrome sometimes where I'm like, I can't draw. uh, Someone gave me a tip. If you're struggling to draw something, draw it 3 times first and then draw it again, which is something that I do if I'm hitting a block. Most of the time, I just push through it. I keep drawing because I know that I'll get through it. I think having been an artist professionally for 9 years now, that has definitely been something that I know that these like not creative phases are going to happen. But if you've chosen this as a career and you want to take it professionally, you just have to like keep pushing through, and creativity is out on the other side. Going out for a mountain biking ride or a walk. I like to try to just stop and observe things if I'm feeling in a creative rut. Just looking outside and really appreciating what's around you definitely helps me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, some here brings up the sketchy trails film Last Day of Summer is amazing. I'll bring up a quick screenshot of that. So I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but how did this come about?
Yeah, so I always wanted to make a film, like an animated comic of mine. People always say that it looked kind of graphic novel, and I really like moving motion graphics. And I thought it would be cool to turn it into a film somehow. Like I didn't exactly know what or how. And Raceface was having this competition called the Creator Series, where you could submit a pitch for your project. They were gonna find a couple of filmmakers to have their dream project. Whole point is like some people are probably sitting out there with great ideas, but they don't have the funding to make them happen. I was like, that's me. So I submitted an idea. I wasn't sure at first. I was at my sister's house at the time. And I like 2 days, I was like on the table making this pitch. I pitched it to them. I won one of the scholarships, like one of the grants. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew what the story would be, which was going to be a story about a girl who broke her bike, and she feels really bummed out. That's her on the ground. She's sad that and she finds a comic book, and she dives into this world of this comic book, and it makes her feel like she's writing again. Because when people say they look at my work, it makes them feel like they're going out on the trails, and I wanted to try to replicate that through art and film. I feel I like watching a lot of mountain biking videos, but I don't think a lot of them go into the fiction, imaginative world as much. It's mostly a lot of documentaries. Yeah. I wanted to have like fun, turn mountain biking and art into it like film, and it was such a. I worked with Julia. She's 13 at the time, and she was amazing. Jason Wong was the animator, and then Luke Humphrey was the videographer, and it really was a team effort. I could not have done it without them because it was my first film. I didn't know what I was doing. So getting guidance from everyone around me was important. And I learned how to do After Effects, like motion graphic stuff when I was back working at the mobile gaming studio years ago. So I got to apply that into this film as well, which was a really useful tool that I would have never known had I not worked at that studio. And so I was really excited to see all the good feedback from the film that it's gotten. We won the award for creative excellence from the Banff Film Festival last year, which was just the best. I was so beyond thrilled, and we were and it's like it was totally a labor of love. We had a timeline for it, which was really tough because, as you know, as an artist trying to work under a timeline, didn't know what I was.
Right.
I knew where I wanted to go with it, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. I hope to make more like it in the future. So
yeah, cool. Yeah. So for those of you that want to see the film with sound, go to ChristinaWaite.com or sketchytrails.com. It's a link there.
Both of them.
Yeah. So here's a good question. Colin, how about you take this one? Any advice for an artist who doesn't know how to get their art out there? How did you gain the exposure?
I think Instagram's a really good place to start. You can get a lot of exposure there. I got a lot of exposure from donating my art, which is maybe not the best way to make it a profession, but I donated it to Bicus. I donated it to a lot of other auctions, and people saw it there. Those can be really big shows. Like in Tucson, there's thousands of people that show up to a lot of those auctions, so that's a good way to do it too. Just get involved in the local art scene. I got a studio in an arts warehouse in Tucson, and I've met a lot of people and kind of found my way into that scene, and then you get exposure through that too. You get to go to shows and meet people and network, all that funny stuff.
The fun part of the art biz. How about you, Christina? Do you have any, aside from getting some art on Seth's Bike Hacks? Like,
yeah. I went to vendor shows. I would say my first bigger breakout was I posted my art on a Reddit mountain bike forum.
Oh.
And I got some traction there. And that was the first time I was like, maybe people want to buy prints. And that came from that post. And then I went to do the Seattle Bike Expo. Mm-hmm. I made prints, I sandblasted some pint glasses. I went out there and I actually got a couple pretty big jobs and opportunities from being at that show. So definitely go. I go try to be a vendor at different expos and festivals. And that's been a really great way to put my art out there as well. I also donated art too. So I was a lot of fundraisers ask, and I think that's a great way to, you're giving your art for free, but you're also helping fund something. So it's a win for everyone. So, but definitely vendor shows, Instagram's also great too. So,
yeah. Let's see. All right, good question. If you guys have any other questions in the YouTube comments, just pop those in there. So here's a question from our friend Andy at Velo Studio. Personal style. Let's have Colin take this one. Is it something you actively developed or just drifted into?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I tried to find my own voice in art, but I also sort of imitated things that I saw that I really respected. And through that, and through the mistakes in trying to imitate those, and through kind of intentional differences, I think I found my own sort of personal style and artistic voice, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm continually doing that. Like it's an endless process, I think.
Did you study like the work of other sculptors or did you look at other mediums completely
I would say both. Yeah. The nuts and bolts and stuff, there's a lot of sculptors that do that. I also I really want to vectorize some of my stuff and like digitize it because it looks almost pixelated or digital to me. So I look at a lot of stuff like that. I had the real honor of being around some amazing artists at Bicus too. There's folks that are just incredible sculptors and incredible metal workers, and so I got the pleasure of watching them work and getting to kind of like see how they did things and and sort of build off of that. So
this is back in the before times.
Yeah. Riding up a mountain.
Yeah. How about you, Christina? How did you get in? How'd your style develop?
Yeah, I would say actively developed, but drifted into. Because I've been working really hard to be an artist ever since college, trying to find that style. And same thing, copy is actually a great way. I learned how to do a style, even though it wasn't my style. And it's a great way to figure out which medium you work best in as well. But when I was working at the game studio, I was doing what their style was too. But I found my style by drawing what I love to do most, which is mountain biking. And how I drew the mountain bikes is how I found what is easiest and I like to do best. And now that like style, I can go back and apply it to what I used to do, which I thought was, which is kind of fun. But I draw every day. That's people ask, how do you do it? That's like draw every day. Create every day. So
cool. All right, coming here from Brenda Kroll. Colin's the best. What are y'all's dream projects? So Colin, if you could have like a dream commission, what would it look like?
Right now, I really want to make a flamingo.
Okay. Why?
Yeah, like
Why flamingo?
you know, like the yard art kind of thing, but you know, a more artsy, whatever one. Yeah, I'd love to do something really big too, like a horse or I don't know, something large.
Nice. Christina, how about you? Like, what would be a dream project?
Yeah, I think a dream project honestly would be designing for Vans shoes. I would love to do some sort of cool Vans shoes. They have some really awesome artist collaborations, and so that would be a really neat project. That or even have like a video game developed in the style that I currently do. I think that's what it would be.
Yeah, you mentioned that you worked in mobile gaming. Did that influence your initial aesthetic, or is that completely separate from how you drew?
Completely separate from how I drew, definitely, but like how I design is still exactly the same. I've learned. I worked on a team, worked with coworkers, worked with like art director, leads. So I think learning those skills on how to work in a studio has helped me in freelancing as well, because like how you talk to people and get through these projects, like the process of how I create, I learned while I worked at the studio, and it's never changed. And it's like I feel like I have that down pretty solid. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. Another fan of Vans.
Yeah.
She'd buy those shoes.
Yeah.
So here's a question: like, what? I know, Colin, you've been getting into the art making full time just fairly recently. But if you could tell your younger self some things that you've learned throughout the years that you've been doing sculpture, what would it be?
Ooh, that's hard. Don't hold back. Like never, like don't do something. Never avoid doing something because you're afraid of it or because you're intimidated by the project, or just jump into it and see where it takes you. I think I used to avoid a lot of stuff because I was afraid of it. I didn't know what parts would create a shape or whatever, and I realized I just find a focus and it'll evolve, it'll develop. Like, yeah.
When you create a piece, do you sketch it out in 3 dimensions, or do you start like what's the?
I've actually developed a process where I do sketch it out in 3 dimensions. I use like 1/4-inch rod and I bend it into the shape of whatever I'm trying to create, and when it creates the silhouette that really like feels right to me, when I see it and I go, oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to make, then I start filling it in and start adding the bike parts.
Right. Awesome. How about you, Christina? What would you tell your younger artistic self?
I'd probably say try not to please people as much. It's true. I think I was trying to draw what other people wanted, when really drawing for myself is what brought me to where I am right now. So
yeah. Cool. So here's a question from Black Girls Do Bike. What other non-cycling / art interests do you have? Like, what other interests do you guys are into that may or may not inform like the art that you guys make?
I have a lot of hobbies, I feel like. Creative and non-creative. I love reading science fiction and fantasy books a lot. I also play some video games, fantasy related. I like to screen print a lot, but I love doing like DIY arts and craftsy type things. Play like board games. I'm a very casual snowboarder. I go backpacking and camping a lot. That's a big one too. That's what I think of off the top of my head.
What about you, Colin?
Well, I like fish and fish tanks. I've kept fish tanks since I was like 11 or 12 years old. So I wouldn't say I'm really into that, but I really enjoy that. I have 1 tank right now. I also really like computers. I've been an IT person and I have a computer science degree, and so I both program and work on and build computers. And I also like working on cars a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Which I was car free for like a decade, but I still like working on cars.
What is it about? What is it about working on cars that's fun?
It's not how dirty and hot and gross they are, but it's how complicated they are. I think there's, it's more. They're not as elegant as bikes, so they can be more challenging in a lot of ways. Although I'm finding some older vehicles are really elegant. They're very mechanical and cool. I've got an old Volkswagen thing that I've been working on a lot. That's really cool.
Yeah. So kind of like almost like from a problem solving perspective.
Yeah, I studied math and computer science in college, and I definitely have that more mechanical element to my brain that I need to stimulate as well. And I find art and in that as well. So, and I find inspiration in that. So I think it's good to stimulate both sides of my brain.
Yeah. I've recently gone into wood, both just making simple pieces of furniture, but also spoon carving. And it's a completely different medium from what I've done before. It's, it's 3-dimensional. It's very hands-on. There's a good chance you can cut off your fingers. So a lot more risk involved. But it's funny. I feel like it activates similar parts of my brain, problem solving aspect. There's a kind of an aspect of design and silhouette and shape and everything. And for me, I've always felt that the more kind of different, but maybe tangentially related things that you do, it enriches, how you look at a problem or a piece of art that you do. Do you guys do you guys agree or find that jive?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am now fascinated by spoon carving.
You are?
Yeah, what are these spoons? I was like, are they like, do they look super like you're in the woods and cut the spoon, or are they like perfectly smooth spoon?
Well, I've only carved one so far and broken half. But okay. our next live stream, actually, I like to incorporate my interest into the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing it with a woman named Pepper Cook, who's a book bike brew on the grams. And she's super into spoon carving and has another Instagram account called Spoon Outside, where people do like spoon exchanges. So
that's cool.
We're going to get nerdy about spoon carving then. But like what draws me to it is, one, it's functional, but there's also like kind of defined forms for what a spoon should, how a spoon should be shaped, depending on its use, but also its like style. So it's pretty fascinating, for something that's so simple that it could also, have like so much depth to it. So we got a question here from Willie Watt. Colin, have you ever tried casting any of your sculptures? And Christine, do you always draw a bike on the trail, or in your art, or at times do you draw what you experience? So Colin, we'll start with you.
No, that'd be really cool. And there's actually an artist that I've gotten to spend a little bit of time with here in Tucson named Mark Rossi. And he's a pretty well-known artist who does casting. Maybe I'll hit him up. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that might be a cool way to, we were talking about production in terms of creating like a one-off, and then like some other, not replicas, but other like pieces that you can offer.
Yeah.
So, Christina, do you like, do you ever draw anything else but bikes on trails?
I do. I don't always share all that stuff on my Instagram because I feel like Sketchy Trails is a mountain biking brand. I like to do a lot of landscape stuff too. Before, when I was definitely working more in mobile games, I had a lot more fantasy sketches. But honestly, what makes me draw most at peace is mountain bikes on trails. For scenery, I love when I go camping, or even sometimes I bike. I'll take my sketchbook and I bike somewhere and I just draw what I see. I find it very calming and relaxing. So art to me, what I like most is the actual, I think, creation of it, which is why I like just bringing a little sketchbook and doing like doodles around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for me, like for my watercolors, I tend to think of them as landscapes with a bike in it. Just because like having a cyclist like gives you a sense of scale rather than just like a panorama. You don't know how like big things are, but when you place like a figure, everything, you know, it sets the proportion and it makes landscapes feel more epic.
And it's a moment.
Yes.
It could be any day, but in that picture is that day on that part of the road. So
Yeah. I also like, you know, I feel like there's you know, prior to all the YouTube and the art, I was a commercial photographer in Los Angeles. And it was this weird transition time between film and digital. I was still shooting like most of my jobs on film. And now, you know, photography is such I don't want to say it's like an easy medium, but it's super accessible. You know, you can learn from your mistakes instantaneously. There's a ton of great, you know, online courses or YouTube tutorials to teach you how to be a photographer. And in some ways, it's a lot quicker to be a decent photographer than it is to, you know, be a decent, you know, someone that does watercolors or drawing or sculpture. Like the learning curve is still a lot steeper in these mediums.
I remember when the Instagram filters started coming out. Do you remember that? I panicked for a bit. I was like, when they turned people's pictures into looking like wet mediums, I was like, oh wow, what if this gets really good? But it's never gonna have the expression that someone can personally bring to it.
Yeah. Here's a question for Colin. Has Colin used 3D modeling software to aid in planning or composing a finished piece?
No, I have thought about that a lot for some of the more design-oriented stuff that I do, some of the fabrication stuff, gates and furniture and stuff. But honestly, I don't think I would want to do that for the sculptures, for the animals and stuff. There's something about the process and not involving a computer and not involving any sort of planning, even really, other than thinking about it in my head, that feels really good to me. Yeah.
So for your client work, like how much do people just say, you know, I trust you, you know, you're going to make it look cool, and how much of a, and I guess like a proof of concept do they require before?
In terms of the sculptures, very, very little. They trust me. There's very little proof of concept or anything like that. Folks will say, "Hey, I want a roadrunner," or "Hey, I want an owl," or or "I want a desert scene," and maybe we'll talk about what little elements they want in the desert scene. But other than that, folks have given me a lot of free reign, which is really cool. In terms of the fabrication and design, the furniture and gates and stuff, I do a lot of drawings and show a lot of reference images, and we go back and forth for that.
Yeah. So it's a lot harder to hit Control Z on a sculptor than
Oh man. Yeah. Nuts and bolts are not easy to get. Like I can't just weld a bunch together and go, we'll trash that.
Yeah. Where do you get your material from?
I get a lot of my material from folks in the community who know me, like leftover bike parts and stuff. I get a lot of my stuff from Bikeus, which is a bicycle recycling and education center, a bike collective, bike co-op that I'm involved in. I'm a board member now. I was a staff member for about 12 years. So there's a lot of scrap that comes out of there, and some of it's going to end up at the scrapyard if I don't take it. So it's really great to get that, but more and more, especially silverware. Everybody's been giving me silverware, which is awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, if anybody has buckets of nuts and bolts, that would be rad. Give them to me.
Nice. Cool. Let's see. Does anyone else have questions for Colin or Christina? Let me see. Just scrolling through. So we were talking about this before we started. Colin, you've got a mathematics background. How does that factor, or does it factor into the sculpture that you do now?
I don't know that I apply it to the sculptures. I think some of the sculptural stuff is kind of moving away from that, actually. But in terms of the more design oriented stuff, I definitely do. Like I love arts and crafts era stuff. I've been playing around with some mid-century kind of proportions, and there's a lot of math in that, you know, like figuring out the proportions that kind of create that design style without being a copy of something that somebody already did. So
Right. Let's see. So here's a question for both of you. Do you still get offers for how much exposure a job would give you? How about you, Christina?
I do, and I don't even know how to answer that, honestly. Other than yes, I do. I don't accept them anymore. So unless it's like some organization and they're like a nonprofit or something. So
yeah. How about you, Colin?
yeah, Sam. I think people always promise a lot of exposure, and they promise, you know, all their buddies are going to hire me or whatever, and you know, like whatever their intentions, that doesn't seem to usually be the case. So I definitely donate to nonprofits and fundraisers for things that I believe in and I value, but yeah, there's enough word of mouth at this point that I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I feel like every artist hits that point, especially when they're first starting. Like, you know, that's the price and value question. How much should I charge something? Am I charging too little or too much? You know, am I a fraud for charging this much? Like, did you guys experience that? And like, how did you come to terms with, you know, whatever number you came up with?
Gosh, I don't know what number. I just remember feeling, I almost feel like it was when confidence came in. Like I think I've done it. Like, I think I'm at like I would never say I'm at like a cruise pace, but it was like a feeling more than anything. That's it.
I think I'm still feeling it out. I keep finding new levels that people are willing to go to. I've been actually offering a sliding scale on a lot of stuff as a way to both make it accessible to folks that, you know, I'm not sure whether they could afford the price I want to ask, but also just to see what folks are willing to pay me for things. So
yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Sean Gold. Yeah, you can't. We all know you can't eat exposure. Yeah, the whole pricing is really tricky. Yeah, because there's not like a set guideline. I remember, I don't know. Yeah, I know that some guilds, when I was doing more professional photography, like there was like a photography guild, and they published their rates. But I don't think that's a thing for sculpture, or maybe freelance illustration. Is there something similar?
If you look online, freelance illustration, when you ask for like hourly rate, you'll see them list $15 an hour to like $500 an hour. It's like, that's not helpful. I actually asked an old instructor of mine how much I should charge is what I asked, and I started with. And then prints, I just looked on Etsy or other businesses and saw how much they're charging, and I pretty much charge whatever other people charge as well. Some, though, I would, that's too high. That I don't. They can sell those great, but
yeah, art's a strange. Yeah, art's a strange thing, because it's not like the, you know, cost of materials equates to value, right? Like the perceived values, you know, either set by or hopefully to some extent set by the artist, but it's also, you know, if the customer is willing to pay for it, then they'll pay for it. Yeah, I know, very, very tricky.
Very.
I remember I went to this. They're like, charge what you think you're worth. I was like, I know I'm worth like $1 million for a project. Is someone gonna pay this? I don't know how I feel about that advice. I'd say charge appropriately to be good. I don't think anyone should undercut their work, but a good place to start is like, what do you think like a good livable fee is almost start there.
Yeah, I started based on metal fabrication rates that people charge, and I've kind of played around with that range. Sometimes art is slow, and sometimes it's going to be a lower hourly rate, and then sometimes I make something awesome in 2 hours, and it goes for more than something that took me 20 hours to make. It's like I don't get it. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So here's another question from our friend Andy at Velo Studio. What tools and techniques are you hoping to experiment with in the future? Thoughts? Colin, you go.
I'm working on getting a oxyacetylene setup together, which is a very basic metalworking setup, but I don't currently personally have one. There's one at Vicus, but I can't take that to my shop all the time. That's not fair for everybody else. So, and I started experimenting with that recently. I made some really cool flowers for a buddy's wedding that I'll be posting on Instagram, in a couple weeks or something. And I love the heat and being able to kind of manipulate the metal a little bit more than just zapping it in place. So,
right, cool. How about you, Christina?
I would like to go back to doing more screen printing. I wanted to try more screen printing for posters. I printed a lot of my own shirts. Unfortunately, the studio closed when COVID happened. And then I also started I would screen print some fabric, and I sewed some like little like pen cases and such. And I would love to do more stuff like that as well. So I guess a tool, technique, both of them. I guess I like to also experiment with oil painting. I did oil painting before I started developing sketchy trails, so it'd be interesting to now, like I said, like take sketchy trails and style and apply it to oil paintings.
Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, I played with line cut prints for a hot second, because I was thinking, again, it was a problem of production. It's like I can do watercolor, but maybe if I cut out a piece of rubber or linoleum and create like a producible piece and then watercolor over it, so there's some uniqueness to each, but it was still kind of a production piece. But we lived in a really small place, and the ink took way longer to dry than I thought. so to not get everything covered in ink, I had to put the brakes on that. But maybe when summer comes around, I might revisit that.
Cool.
Let's see. Here. Left-handed or right-handed?
Left-handed.
You're left-handed?
Yeah.
I actually use both.
Oh, yeah.
I'm right-handed, but when I'm welding, I use both. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Right. There's a.
Hi, Daniel. Hi, Danny.
Aww.
Is he a Tucsonian?
No, Daniel's in Mexico.
Okay, cool. Another shout out from Carla. Nice. Cool. Well, we're hitting our hour mark. If you guys have any last minute questions, put those in the comments. And I guess I'm gonna turn it over to you guys. Is there anything you want other people to know about your art that we didn't happen to cover?
Oh gosh. No. I don't know. I talked about influences, my board game, my film. That's pretty much the thing I like to share mostly is like my film I worked on. So, but thank you so much for sharing that with people.
Yeah, cool. How about you, Colin? Any last minute thoughts that people should know?
No, I don't know. Who wants a flamingo?
There you go. Yeah, someone order a flamingo. Let's make that happen. Yeah, speaking of that, if someone wants to get a sculpture, is Instagram the best place to reach you, or do you have a website for the Grams?
Yeah, definitely. No, my website's like so painfully outdated, which is funny since I'm a programmer. But yeah, don't look at my website. Go to my Instagram.
Nice. And Christina, you have a very bold "do not DM me," although I DM you on your gram.
I know. I follow you, so it pops up. I don't always check them, which is why I really want people to email me, Christina@sketchytrails.com. I don't check it that often. It's too much, and email's way easier. So
yeah, cool. Well, thank you guys for being on the live stream. Hopefully someone will commission the flamingo. I'd love to see your interpretation for that. So that should be pretty cool.
Me too.
Yeah. And Christina, thanks so much for being on the live stream.
You're welcome. This was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, well, take us home here. So we got 72 people in the chat. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out Colin and Christina's artwork. They're both on the gram at Rusty Pedal and at Sketchy Trails. Both talented artists. Super stoked that they were on the live stream. And I'd alluded to it, but we are going to have a special guest next Sunday. We're going to talk bikes and spoon carving, which is going to be the next big thing. Spoon packing. So it should be a good time. And thank you all for joining us on the live stream. And as always, keep the supple side down.